My name is Delphine Hargrove, and at 70 years old, I never imagined I'd become a prisoner in my own home. The rain hammered against the windows of my Portland house that November morning, creating rivulets that blurred the view of my carefully tended rose garden. I stood at the kitchen sink, my arthritic hands submerged in scalding dishwater, scrubbing at the remnants of last night's dinner, a dinner I'd cooked, served, and was now cleaning up alone. The clock on the microwave read 6:47 a.m. I'd been awake since 5. My daughter Autumn, 38 years old, married, mother of 2, sat at my dining table, scrolling through her phone with one hand while holding a coffee mug in the other, a coffee I'd made for her 20 minutes ago. "Mom, the kids need their lunches packed," she called out without looking up from her screen. "And make sure Oliver's sandwich has the crusts cut off. He won't eat it otherwise." I dried my hands on a dish towel, wincing as pain shot through my knuckles. My doctor had warned me about doing too much, about how my arthritis would worsen if I didn't rest. But rest was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. "Autumn, honey, I was hoping we could talk this morning," I began carefully, approaching the table where she sat like a queen on a borrowed throne. She finally looked up, her eyes, once warm like her father's, now cold and assessing. "If this is about you needing a break again, Mom, I really don't have time for it. Marcus and I have been over this. You live here rent-free. The least you can do is help with the kids." My chest tightened. Rent-free, in my own house. The house my late husband Theodore and I had paid off 30 years ago. The house where I'd raised Autumn, where I'd nursed Theodore through his final illness, where every corner held memories of a life I'd built with my own hands and heart. "Autumn, this is my house," I said quietly, but firmly. "I'm not living here rent-free. You moved in with me 2 years ago when you said you needed help getting back on your feet." She set down her phone with enough force to make me flinch. "Are you seriously going to play that card? After everything Marcus and I do for you? Who drives you to your doctor's appointments? Who makes sure you're not lonely in this big house all by yourself?" I wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was closer to a sob I quickly swallowed. Doctor's appointments she drove me to because she'd convinced me to sell my car, claiming I was too old to drive safely. Loneliness she'd promised to cure by moving in, only to leave me more isolated than ever, cooking and cleaning while she and Marcus lived their lives around me as if I were furniture. The truth was, they hadn't been getting back on their feet at all. Marcus had quit his job 6 months after they moved in, claiming he was starting a business that never materialized. Their financial contribution to the household was exactly $0.00. My Social Security and the modest savings Theodore had left me, meant to sustain me through my final years, now supported 4 people. "I want to help, sweetheart. I really do." I tried again, my voice shaking slightly. "But I'm tired. My doctor says I need to take it easy, and I just need you to understand that I can't keep doing everything." Autumn stood up so abruptly. Her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Theodore had refinished the summer before he died. "You know what, Mom? Maybe you should think really hard about how much you want to push this conversation." Her voice had dropped to something dangerous, something I'd never heard before. "Because if you can't contribute to this household, if you're going to be difficult, then maybe Marcus and I need to reconsider our living situation. And I think we both know you can't afford to maintain this house on your own." The words hung in the air like poison. My own daughter, threatening to kick me out of my own home. "Are you—" I couldn't even finish the sentence. Are you threatening me, Autumn?" She picked up her phone and her coffee mug, walking toward the stairs that led to what used to be my craft room, now her and Marcus's bedroom. "I'm being realistic, Mom. Think about it. Now, the kids need to be at school by 8:15. Don't forget Oliver's inhaler." I stood frozen in my kitchen, listening to her footsteps on the stairs, each one echoing like a judge's gavel sealing my fate. Through the window, I could see my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, taking out her recycling. She was 82 and lived independently, drove herself to the senior center twice a week for Tai Chi classes, traveled to visit her grandchildren in California every summer. When had I become so powerless? When had I let myself become invisible in my own life? I looked around my kitchen, at Theodore's favorite coffee mug hanging on the rack, at the herb garden I'd started on the windowsill, at the small calendar where I used to mark lunch dates with my book club friends. I hadn't seen them in months. Autumn always needed me to watch the kids when they met. My hands were still shaking as I began making Oliver's sandwich, carefully cutting off the crusts. My 7-year-old grandson, who I adored, who I'd do anything for, but at what cost? That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. I couldn't remember the last time Autumn or Marcus had said thank you for anything I'd done. I couldn't remember the last time they'd asked me how I was feeling, what I wanted for dinner, what I wanted at all. I'd become the help. Worse, I'd become the unpaid, unappreciated help who could be threatened with homelessness in her own home. As I wrapped the sandwich in wax paper and placed it in Oliver's lunchbox alongside the apple slices and crackers he liked, a thought crystallized in my mind with perfect, terrifying clarity. Something had to change. And if Autumn wouldn't change, then I would have to. But what could a 70-year-old woman with arthritis and a dwindling bank account do against her own daughter, who held all the cards? The rain continued to fall outside, and somewhere in the house, I heard Oliver and his sister Sage beginning to stir. Another day of cooking, cleaning, childcare, and invisibility stretched before me, unless I found the courage to do something about it. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Invisibility. The following days passed in a fog of routine and resentment that I swallowed with every meal I prepared, every load of laundry I folded, every homework assignment I supervised. I began keeping a journal. It seemed foolish at first. What was I? A teenage girl documenting her crushes. But my friend Vera from the book club, during a rare phone call I managed to sneak in while everyone was out, had suggested it. "Delphine, write it down," she'd said, her voice firm through the phone. "Every single thing you do, every time they dismiss you, you need to see it clearly, in black and white." So I did. I found an old notebook Theodore had given me years ago, one I'd been saving for something special, and I started documenting my life. November 15th. Woke at 5 a.m., made breakfast for 4, packed 2 school lunches, drove carpool. Marcus needed my car for business meeting. Grocery shopping, $247 from my account. Made dinner, cleaned kitchen, watched kids while Autumn and Marcus went to movie. Bed at 11:30 p.m. No one said thank you. Autumn complained the roast was dry. November 16th. Woke at 5:15 a.m., made breakfast. Marcus asked why I hadn't bought his favorite cereal. I had, he just hadn't looked in the pantry. Took Sage to dentist, cavities, $340 from my account. Autumn said she'd pay me back. She won't. She never does. Made lasagna for dinner. Oliver spilled juice on carpet. I cleaned it. Marcus said I was hovering when I reminded him to help Oliver with homework. Bed at midnight. My back is killing me. November 17th. Couldn't get out of bed until 6 a.m. Back pain too severe. Autumn came into my room at 6:15 to complain kids would be late for school if I didn't hurry. No concern about why I was still in bed. Took my pain medication and pushed through the day. Made 3 meals. Did 4 loads of laundry. Autumn asked why I looked so tired all the time, as if it was a personal failing. The pattern was clear, even before Vera pointed it out when I read her some entries over the phone. "Oh, Delphine," she'd whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "This isn't help they need. This is servitude they're demanding." I knew she was right, but knowing something and doing something about it are different countries entirely, separated by an ocean of fear. It was a Saturday afternoon when things shifted from bad to worse. I was in the kitchen, where else, making cookies with Sage. My 9-year-old granddaughter sat at the counter, her dark hair pulled into a ponytail, flour dusting her nose. These moments were the ones that made everything worth it, I told myself. The pure joy in her eyes as she pressed cookie cutters into the dough. "Grandma, can I tell you a secret?" Sage asked, her voice small. "Of course, sweetheart. Mom says we might have to move to a smaller house because you can't afford this one anymore." She looked up at me with those innocent eyes. "Is that true? Are you poor?" My hand stilled on the rolling pin. The lies Autumn was telling her own children. The narrative she was building where I was the burden. The broke old woman who needed their charity. "Sage, honey, that's not quite right." "Mom," Marcus's voice boomed from the living room. "There's no beer in the fridge. I thought you were going to the store." I stepped into the living room, wiping flour from my hands. Marcus lounged on my sofa, Theodore's sofa, the one we'd saved 6 months to buy, his feet on the coffee table, watching a football game on the television we'd bought 40 years ago, and that still worked perfectly. "Marcus, I went to the store on Thursday. I bought beer. It's in the garage refrigerator. He didn't look at me. That's not convenient. I want it in the kitchen fridge. The kitchen fridge is full of food for the week. The garage is 10 steps away. Now he looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes chilled me. Contempt. Pure, undisguised contempt. You know, Delphine, for someone who doesn't contribute financially to this household, you sure do have a lot of opinions about how things should be done. I felt Sage's small hand slip into mine. She'd followed me from the kitchen, and now she stood beside me, confused by the tension crackling in the air. Marcus, I think we need to have a family conversation, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart, about expectations and... What we need, Autumn's voice cut through the room as she descended the stairs, her laptop under her arm, is for everyone to remember their place in this household. Mom, Marcus and I have been talking. We think it's time we formalize our arrangement here. She sat down at the dining table, opening her laptop with the efficiency of a lawyer preparing to serve papers. We've been more than generous, letting you stay in this house even though the maintenance costs are astronomical. But we need to make sure everyone is pulling their weight. I walked to the table, my granddaughter's hand still clutching mine. Autumn, this is my house. I'm not staying here. You're living with me. She pulled out a sheet of paper and slid it across the table. I picked it up with my free hand, my eyes scanning the words that blurred as tears threatened to fall. It was a rental agreement for my own house, listing Marcus and Autumn as the primary residents, me as a tenant. Monthly rent, $1,200, nearly all of my Social Security income. Additional clause, tenant agrees to provide household maintenance, cooking, and childcare services in lieu of increased rent. You can't be serious, I whispered. I'm completely serious. Either you sign this, or Marcus and I will need to make other arrangements. And honestly, Mom, at your age, with your health issues, finding somewhere affordable to live is going to be nearly impossible. We're giving you a place to stay. All we're asking is that you contribute. Sage squeezed my hand tighter. Even at 9, she understood something terrible was happening. Mommy, why is Grandma crying? She's not crying, baby. She's just tired. Grandma gets emotional when she's tired. Why don't you go upstairs and play? But I was crying. Silent tears streaming down my face as I stood in my own dining room, holding a document that sought to make official what had already become my reality. I was being erased from my own life. I need time to think about this, I managed to say. Autumn's expression hardened. You have until Monday. And Mom? If you decide to be difficult about this, just remember, we can't keep living in a situation that's not working for everyone. It might be better for all of us if we part ways. The threat was clear. Sign away my dignity and my home, or lose my daughter and grandchildren forever. Be alone at 70 with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. That night, after I'd tucked the kids into bed and cleaned up the dinner dishes, the cookies Sage and I had made sitting uneaten on the counter, I locked myself in my bedroom and called Vera. She wants me to sign a rental agreement, I said, my voice breaking. For my own house, Vera, my house. Don't sign it, Vera said immediately. Delphine, listen to me. Don't sign anything. Call my son-in-law. You remember David? He's a real estate attorney. Let me give you his number. I can't afford. The consultation is free for friends of family. Call him Monday morning. Promise me. I promised, though I wasn't sure what good it would do. What kind of legal recourse did I have? Autumn and Marcus lived here. They'd established residency. If I tried to evict them, it would be a nightmare that could take months, maybe longer. But more than that, they were my family. Autumn was my only child. Oliver and Sage were my only grandchildren. If I fought this, would I ever see them again? I lay in bed that night, Theodore's absence a physical ache beside me. He would have known what to do. He always knew what to do. The rain had returned, tapping against the window like Morse code from some distant shore. And for the first time in 2 years, since Autumn had first knocked on my door with her sad story of Marcus losing his job, of needing a place, just temporarily, I let myself imagine something radical. What if I left? What if I simply disappeared? The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. But where would I go? How would I survive? And yet, as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, a plan began to form in the back of my mind. A dangerous, desperate plan. But perhaps desperate times called for desperate measures. After all, I'd spent 2 years being invisible in my own home. Maybe it was time to see what would happen if I actually disappeared. Chapter 3. The Consultation. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, drizzling rain that makes Portland feel like it's weeping. I woke earlier than usual, 4:30 a.m., my mind already racing through the conversation I'd rehearsed 100 times during the sleepless night. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy pantsuit Theodore had always loved, the one I'd worn to Autumn's college graduation. I wanted to feel strong, to remember who I'd been before I'd become this diminished version of myself. At 6 a.m., before anyone else was awake, I slipped out of the house and drove to the 24-hour diner 3 miles away. My hands shook as I ordered coffee. I didn't drink and waited for 9 a.m., when David Brennan's law office would open. The truth was, I'd sold my car, or rather, Autumn had convinced me to sell it, for my own safety. But what she didn't know was that I'd kept my license current. And what Marcus didn't know was that the business meetings he took my old Honda Civic to were trackable through the phone I'd secretly placed under the passenger seat. I knew he was spending his days at sports bars and shopping malls while I scrubbed floors and raised their children. But I'd never told Autumn, because I was afraid of the confrontation, afraid of losing her, afraid of being alone. That fear had made me a prisoner. And prisoners, I was learning, sometimes had to stage their own escape. At 8:45 a.m., I called David Brennan's office from a payphone. Yes, there was still one at the diner, a relic from another era like me. His secretary put me through immediately. "Mrs. Hargrove, Vera told me you might call. I have time this morning if you can come in at 10. I could, and I did. His office was in downtown Portland, in one of those old buildings with crown molding and tall windows that overlooked the Willamette River. David was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Tell me everything," he said. After offering me tea, I gratefully accepted. My hands were still shaking. I told him all of it, the 2 years of broken promises, the mounting expenses I'd absorbed, the reduction of my role from mother and grandmother to servant, the rental agreement Autumn had presented, the threats to leave, to take the children, to make me homeless. I showed him my journal. He read through several entries, his expression growing darker with each page. "Mrs. Hargrove, I'm going to be very direct with you. What your daughter and son-in-law are doing isn't just morally wrong, it's potentially illegal. This is financial exploitation of an elderly person. The rental agreement she tried to make you sign would likely be unenforceable, given that it's your property and you're being coerced. But they're family," I whispered. "I don't want to send them to jail or—" "No one is going to jail," he said gently. "But you need to understand your rights. This is your house, legally, completely, indisputably yours. They are residents you've allowed to stay. You have every right to ask them to leave. The eviction process would take 60 to 90 days in Oregon. Yes, but there are other options. Tell me, Mrs. Hargrove, what do you want? Not what do they want. Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" I sat in that leather chair, looking out at the gray Portland morning, and for the first time in 2 years, I let myself think about what I wanted. "I want my life back," I said simply. "I want to stop being afraid in my own home. I want my daughter to see me as a person again, not as free labor. I paused, the thought so radical it felt dangerous. "I want to leave. I want to go somewhere they can't find me, where I can think clearly without being manipulated every day. I want them to understand what they've done." David leaned back in his chair. "That's a brave choice, and it's absolutely your right to make it. Let me ask you this. Do you have access to your own financial accounts, your Social Security, your savings?" "Yes. Everything is in my name. Theodore made sure of that before he passed. He was always worried about—" I stopped, realization dawning. He was worried about this, about Autumn taking advantage. Theodore had seen something in our daughter that I'd refused to acknowledge, a selfishness that had grown over the years, a sense of entitlement that we'd inadvertently fostered. "Smart man," David said. "Here's what I'm going to suggest. But please understand, I'm telling you your legal options. Whether you exercise them is entirely your choice." He outlined a plan that took my breath away. I could leave. I could literally pack a bag and go, because it was my house, my money, my life. I wasn't abandoning anyone. They were adults who'd been living off my resources for 2 years without contribution. More than that, I could stop the automatic payments that were coming from my account, the utilities, the property taxes, The maintenance costs. Everything that made the house function was paid by me. If I stopped paying, they'd realize very quickly how much you were subsidizing their lifestyle, David said. The question is, are you prepared for the fallout? Was I? I thought of Autumn's face, of Marcus's contempt, of the sweet weight of Sage's hand in mine. I need to do this in a way that teaches them a lesson, but doesn't destroy them, I said slowly. Why, I need them to understand what they've done, but I don't want Oliver and Sage to suffer. That's good thinking. What if we set up a trust for the children's education? Something Autumn and Marcus can't touch. And what if you left them a letter explaining exactly why you're leaving and what needs to happen for you to consider returning? We spent the next hour crafting a plan that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would liquidate some investments, nothing that would leave me destitute, but enough to give me freedom. I would stop all automatic payments on the house. I would inform the bank that I was traveling and that no one should have access to my accounts but me, and I would disappear. Where will you go? David asked. I thought of my sister Rosemary in Ashland, 3 hours south. We'd drifted apart over the years, mostly because Autumn had monopolized all my time, but she'd sent me a card just last month. Come visit anytime, Del. I miss you. I have a place, I said. Someone who will be happy to see me. David drew up the paperwork right there. A living trust for Oliver and Sage's education. $50,000 set aside that Autumn couldn't access. A cease and desist letter warning them that any attempt to access my financial accounts would be prosecuted. A statement documenting their residency in my home, and my right to revoke that permission at any time. The eviction notice will be delivered by certified mail 3 days after you leave, David explained. They'll have 60 days to find new housing. That's generous, Mrs. Hargrove. Very generous, considering. They're still my family, I said, though I wondered if family should feel this much like warfare. As I left David's office, my purse heavy with documents that felt like weapons of war, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. I felt powerful. I felt seen. I felt like Delphine Hargrove again, not just on Mom's or Grandma or the invisible woman who cooked and cleaned and ceased to exist, but I also felt terrified, because what I was about to do would change everything. There would be no going back from this. Autumn would hate me. She might never forgive me. The children might grow up thinking I abandoned them. And yet, wasn't I already abandoned? Wasn't I already invisible to them? When was the last time Autumn had asked about my day, my dreams, my pain? When was the last time she'd seen me as anything other than a convenience? I sat in my car in the parking garage, having borrowed Vera's sedan for the day, and I cried. Not the silent, swallowed tears I'd been crying for months, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere I'd kept locked tight. Theodore, I thought. I'm so sorry I let it get this bad. I'm so sorry I didn't fight back sooner, but I was fighting now. Maybe not in the way I'd imagined, not with confrontation and screaming matches, but in a way that felt true to who I was. I was reclaiming my life, even if it meant walking away from people I loved, even if it meant being alone, because being alone, I was starting to realize, might be better than being invisible. Chapter 4. The Disappearance. I chose a Wednesday. Wednesdays were unremarkable, the middle of the week, when everyone was locked into their routines. Marcus would be out on another business meeting. That was really just him avoiding responsibility. Autumn would be at her book club, a luxury she allowed herself while I watched the children, and the kids would be at school until 3 p.m. The night before, I barely slept. I lay in my bed, mine and Theodore's bed, and listened to the house settle around me. Every creak of the floorboards felt like goodbye. At 5 a.m. on Wednesday, on December 3rd, I woke for the last time in my bedroom. I'd already packed 2 suitcases over the course of several days, hiding them in the back of my closet behind the winter coats no one ever looked at. I took only what mattered: photographs, Theodore's watch, my mother's jewelry, some clothes, the journal I'd been keeping. I left behind everything else. Let Autumn have the furniture, the decorations, the life we'd built. Material things could be replaced. Dignity couldn't. I made breakfast one last time. Pancakes, Oliver's favorite. I packed their lunches with extra care, adding little notes I'd written. Oliver, you're braver than you know. Love, Grandma. Sage, keep being curious. The world needs your questions. Love, Grandma. Then I did something that nearly broke my resolve. I went into each of their rooms and just stood there. Sage's room with its posters of marine biologists and ocean creatures. Oliver's room with his rock collection and the astronomy books we'd been reading together. These children, I loved them so much it physically hurt, but I couldn't save them by drowning myself. I couldn't teach them that love means accepting abuse, that family means erasing yourself for others. Convenience. Maybe, by leaving, I could teach them something more valuable, that everyone, even grandmothers, deserve to be treated with respect. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. At 8 a.m., after everyone had left, I placed my letter on the kitchen table, weighted down by my house keys. The letter had taken me 3 days to write, with David's help. It was 2 pages, typed, clear and unemotional. Autumn and Marcus, I have left. Not because I don't love you, but because I love myself enough to refuse to be treated this way any longer. For 2 years, I have provided you with free housing, food, childcare, and housekeeping. I have done this willingly, believing you needed temporary help. Instead, you have built a permanent life on the foundation of my diminishment. You have reduced me to unpaid labor. You have dismissed my health concerns. You have spent my money without contribution or gratitude. You have threatened to make me homeless in my own home. And you have done this while teaching Oliver and Sage that this is acceptable treatment of people we love. I will not sign a rental agreement for my own house. I will not continue to finance a lifestyle you refuse to contribute to. Effective immediately, all automatic payments from my accounts have been stopped. The mortgage is paid off, but the property taxes, utilities, and maintenance are your responsibility now. The eviction notice will arrive by certified mail. You have 60 days to make other arrangements. I have established education trusts for Oliver and Sage that you cannot access. They will always be provided for, but I will not continue to enable your exploitation of me. If you wish to rebuild our relationship, it must be as equals who respect each other, not as servant and master. I am your mother, not your maid. I am safe. I am well. Do not try to find me. When and if I'm ready, I will reach out. I hope someday you'll understand that I did this not despite loving you, but because I love myself too. Mom. I read it one more time, my hands shaking. Then I took my suitcases, locked the door behind me, and got into Vera's car. She was waiting for me at the end of the block, her face creased with worry. Are you sure about this? She asked, as I loaded my bags into her trunk. No, I said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. We drove to the bank first. I transferred funds to an account Autumn didn't know about, one I'd opened a week ago at a different bank. I called the utility companies and canceled the automatic payments, informing them that any new service requests would need to come from the homeowners, not me. Then I called my sister Rosemary. Dell, is everything okay? Rose, I need a favor. Can I come stay with you for a while? I'll explain everything when I get there. But I need to disappear for a bit. There was a pause. Then, how soon can you be here? That's the thing about sisters. The good ones don't ask questions when you're drowning. They just throw you a rope. By noon, I was on the road to Ashland. Vera had insisted on driving me. I'll take the train back. Don't you worry. And as Portland disappeared in the rearview mirror, I felt something crack open in my chest. It might have been grief. It might have been relief. It felt like both. What do you think will happen? I asked Vera as we passed through Salem. I think reality is about to hit them like a freight train, she said. The first utility bill that doesn't get paid. The first time there's no food in the house because nobody went shopping. The first time they have to arrange childcare or cook dinner or clean up after themselves. They'll hate me. Maybe. For a while. But Delphine, you're giving them the greatest gift you can. The chance to grow up. To realize what you were carrying for them. And if they never realize it, she reached over and squeezed my hand. Then at least you'll know you tried, and you'll be free. Free. The word felt foreign, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. We stopped for lunch at a diner in Eugene. I ordered a sandwich I didn't eat, my stomach too knotted with anxiety. What had I done? I'd just abandoned my family, my grandchildren. What kind of person did that make me? You're not abandoning them, Vera said, reading my mind. And they abandoned you first. They abandoned you the day they stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a convenience. But the guilt felt crushing anyway. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Autumn's name flashed on the screen. She'd be picking the kids up from school soon. Maybe she'd gone home first to grab something. Maybe she'd found the letter. I didn't answer. I'd turned off my phone's location services that morning. As far as anyone tracking me could tell, I was still in Portland. The phone rang 7 more times before we reached Ashland. Each time, I let it go to voicemail. Each time, my heart hammered against my ribs. By the time we pulled into Rosemary's driveway, a small craftsman cottage on a tree-lined street that looked like something from a fairy tale, my voicemail was full. I didn't listen to the messages. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Rosemary came out of the house before we'd even parked, her silver hair shorter than I remembered, her face older, but her eyes the same warm brown as our mother's. "Delphine," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. "Welcome. You can stay as long as you need." As Vera drove away with promises to visit soon, as Rosemary led me inside to a guest room with a window overlooking a garden just beginning its winter dormancy, as I finally allowed myself to collapse onto a bed that wasn't in my own house, I felt the weight of the day settle over me. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I'd disappeared. And somewhere in Portland, my daughter was discovering that the foundation of her life had just walked out the door. The consequences would come. The anger, the accusations, the recriminations. But tonight, I was safe. I was seen. I was Delphine Hargrove again. Even if Delphine Hargrove was currently crying into her sister's spare pillow, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the smell of coffee brewing. For a beautiful, disorienting moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory crashed back like a wave, and I sat up abruptly, my heart pounding. I'd actually left. My phone sat on the nightstand where I'd plugged it in to charge. The screen showed 43 missed calls, 27 text messages, and 12 voicemails, all from Autumn. My hands shook as I picked it up. I should read them. I should know what I was dealing with. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I got dressed and followed the smell of coffee to Rosemary's kitchen. My sister sat at a small round table, the newspaper spread before her, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up and smiled. "Morning? Del, how'd you sleep?" "Like someone who just blew up her entire life," I said, attempting humor that came out hollow. She poured me coffee without asking how I took it. She remembered, even after all these years, and pushed a plate of toast toward me. "Eat, then talk." In that order. I managed half a piece of toast before the words started spilling out. Everything. The 2 years of diminishment, the rental agreement, the threats, the letter I'd left, the plan with David Brennan. Rosemary listened without interruption, her face growing increasingly troubled. "Del, I'm going to say something you might not want to hear," she said when I finished. "I think Autumn learned this behavior." I stiffened. "What do you mean?" "You and Theodore. You were wonderful parents in many ways, but you also never let that girl face a single consequence. Every time she made a bad choice, you cleaned it up. She wrecked the car at 17. You bought her another one. She racked up credit card debt in college. You paid it off. She married Marcus against your better judgment. You threw them a lavish wedding you couldn't afford." Each example landed like a stone in my stomach because they were all true. I was being supportive. I protested weakly. You were being an enabler. There's a difference. And now she's an adult who genuinely believes she's entitled to everything you have because you've never shown her otherwise. Rosemary reached across the table and took my hand. "This might be the first real boundary you've ever set with her, and it's going to be ugly before it gets better. If it gets better." Before I could respond, my phone rang again. Autumn. Again. "You're going to have to answer eventually," Rosemary said gently. "I know. I need to be ready." Will you ever be ready for that conversation? Probably not. But I silenced the phone anyway, and spent the day in Rosemary's garden, pulling winter weeds and trying to quiet my mind. Physical labor had always been my therapy, even with arthritis making every movement a small negotiation with pain. That evening, I finally forced myself to listen to the voicemails. The first few were confused. "Mom, where are you? The kids are worried. Call me back." Then angry. "Seriously? You just left? Without telling anyone? That's incredibly irresponsible, Mom. What if something happened to you?" Then furious. "You stopped the utilities. Are you kidding me right now? The electric company says you called and canceled everything. What the hell is wrong with you? Then desperate. Mom, please, we need to talk. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just come home. The last one made me cry. The kids keep asking where you are. Oliver thinks you're dead. Sage thinks you left because she was bad. Please, Mom, please call me back. I called David Brennan instead. The eviction notice was delivered this morning. He told me. You should expect significant pushback. Are you somewhere safe? I'm with my sister. Good. Don't tell Autumn where you are. Not yet. Let the consequences sink in first. Let her understand what she's lost before you consider any reconciliation. But how do you let consequences sink in when every maternal instinct in your body is screaming to make things better, to fix it, to go back? I slept poorly that night, haunted by dreams of Oliver's face asking where I'd gone, of Sage crying at the kitchen table. On Friday morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. This time it wasn't Autumn. It was Marcus. Against my better judgment, I answered. Delphine. His voice was cold, controlled. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. You need to come back and fix this mess you've created. Hello, Marcus. I'm not coming back. Like hell you're not. You can't just abandon your family. That's not how this works. Something in me snapped. Actually, Marcus, I can. Because it's my house, my money, and my life. You and Autumn have been living off my resources for 2 years without contributing a single cent. That ends now. We're family. Family doesn't exploit each other. Family doesn't threaten to kick elderly women out of their own homes. Family doesn't reduce mothers and grandmothers to unpaid servants. You're being dramatic. I have a journal documenting every day of the past 6 months. I have bank statements showing thousands of dollars I've spent on groceries, utilities, and childcare while you played video games and went to bars. I have a rental agreement you and Autumn tried to force me to sign. Should I continue? Silence on the other end. Then, where are you? Somewhere you can't guilt me into coming back. You have 60 days, Marcus. Find a job. Find housing. Figure it out like actual adults. You'll never see the kids again if you do this. The threat hung in the air, ugly and desperate. Using children as weapons, I said quietly, is the lowest thing you could do. And if you genuinely care about Oliver and Sage, you'll explain to them that Grandma left because she was being hurt, not because she doesn't love them. But I'm guessing you won't do that. I'm guessing you'll make me the villain in your story, because that's easier than admitting what you've done. I hung up before he could respond, then immediately called David. He threatened to keep the children from me, I said, my voice shaking. Document everything. Save that conversation if it's recorded. But Delphine, you need to understand. They have no legal grounds to keep you from your grandchildren. Oregon has grandparent visitation rights. If it comes to that, we can pursue it legally. It shouldn't have to come to that, I whispered. No, it shouldn't, but it might. The weekend passed in a haze of anxiety and second-guessing. Rosemary kept me busy. Walks through Lithia Park, dinner at her favorite Thai restaurant, a play at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. She was giving me a gift, the reminder that life existed beyond the cage I'd been living in. On Monday morning, exactly 5 days after I'd left, I received an email from Autumn. The subject line read, "We need to talk." I opened it with trembling hands. Mom, I don't understand why you did this. I don't understand how you could just leave without talking to us. Marcus says you called him and said horrible things. Oliver cries every night asking when you're coming home. Sage thinks she did something wrong. I know things have been hard. I know we've asked a lot of you, but running away isn't the answer. Families work through problems together. The electric got shut off yesterday. Did you know that? Did you know that we had to scramble to get it turned back on? And the deposit was $400 we didn't have. How could you do that to us? To your grandchildren. I'm trying to understand. I really am. But right now, all I feel is hurt and confused and angry. If you ever loved us, you'll come back and we'll figure this out. Please, Mom, please. Autumn. I read it 3 times, each time my heart breaking a little more, because she still didn't get it. She was angry about the electric bill, about the inconvenience, about being forced to scramble, but there was no acknowledgement of what she'd done, no recognition of the 2 years of exploitation, no apology for the rental agreement, the threats, the reduction of her mother to household staff. It was all about her pain, her inconvenience, her needs. I showed the email to Rosemary. "What do you think I should do?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think you should ask yourself what you want, not what Autumn wants, not what's easiest. What do you want, Delphine?" What did I want? I wanted my daughter back, but the daughter I remembered, before entitlement and selfishness had taken root. I wanted my grandchildren in my life, but not at the cost of my dignity and health. I wanted Autumn to understand, to really understand what she'd done, but I was beginning to realize that might never happen. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. 2 weeks after my disappearance, I finally responded to Autumn's email. It took me 3 days to write 4 paragraphs. Autumn. I left, because staying was destroying me. For 2 years, I have been your nanny, your maid, your cook, your financial support, everything except your mother. Because mothers are people who deserve respect, and you stopped seeing me as a person. The electric bill you paid? I paid that every month for 2 years, along with water, gas, property tax, and groceries. You know how much I spent on your family in that time. Over $73,000. My retirement savings. Money your father left me to live on through my final years. I didn't abandon the children. I removed myself from an abusive situation. If you want them to understand why I left, tell them the truth. Grandma was being hurt, and she had to take care of herself. I love you. I always will. But I won't come back until you can acknowledge what you did wrong. Not what was hard for you because I left. What was wrong about how you treated me before I left. Mom. Her response came within an hour. You're calling us abusive. Do you have any idea how insulting that is? We gave you purpose, and Mom. You were lonely after Dad died. We gave you a family to take care of. And this is how you repay us. I stared at those words. We gave you purpose, and felt something inside me go cold and hard. They hadn't given me purpose. They'd given me servitude, and called it meaning. I didn't respond. David had advised me not to engage in emotional arguments via email, and he was right. Words could be twisted, taken out of context, used against me. Instead, I focused on building a life in Ashland. Rosemary introduced me to her friends at the senior center. I joined a water aerobics class that was gentle on my arthritis. I started volunteering at the library, organizing book clubs for elderly patrons who reminded me that there was life after 70, that I wasn't too old to start over. The bills began arriving at the Portland house. I knew because Autumn's emails went from angry to desperate. The water got shut off. How are we supposed to live without water? Marcus is trying to find work, but nobody's hiring. We can't afford all these bills. Your lawyer sent us more papers. You're really going to evict us, your own daughter. Each email stabbed at my guilt, but I held firm, because beneath the complaints, beneath the accusations of cruelty, there was never an apology, never a recognition, just endless demands that I fix what I'd broken, as if I'd broken anything except my own chains. In week 3, Vera drove down to visit. We sat on Rosemary's porch, drinking tea and watching the December rainfall. Autumn showed up at my house, Vera said quietly. She wanted to know where you are. My heart lurched. You didn't tell her? Of course not. But Delphine, you need to see her eventually. Those children need their grandmother. I want to see them, I said, my voice breaking. God, Vera, I miss them so much I can't breathe sometimes. But how can I go back without teaching Autumn that what she did was acceptable? How can I see the kids without Autumn using them as leverage? I don't have answers, Vera admitted. But I do know this is destroying you, both of you. Maybe that was the point. Maybe some things needed to be destroyed before they could be rebuilt properly. On Christmas Eve, I received a package. No return address, but I recognized Oliver's handwriting on the label. Inside were 2 homemade cards. Oliver's featured a drawing of our family with me standing far away from everyone else. Please come home for Christmas, Grandma. We miss you. Sage's was more elaborate. A pop-up card that had obviously taken hours. Inside, in her careful 3rd-grade handwriting, I'm sorry for whatever I did wrong. I'll be better. I promise. Love, Sage. I sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. These innocent children, caught in the middle of adult dysfunction, blaming themselves for my absence. I called David immediately. I want to see them, I said. Just the kids. Is there a way to arrange that? We can request supervised visitation through the courts if Autumn refuses, or you could propose a neutral meeting place, somewhere public. I drafted an email to Autumn that took me 2 hours to write. I would like to see Oliver and Sage, not at the house, not with you or Marcus present, just me and the children, for lunch, somewhere public. Let them know I didn't leave because of them. Let them know I still love them. If you care about them at all, you'll make this happen. Her response came on Christmas morning. Fine, but don't think this means I forgive you for what you've done to this family. We arranged to meet at a park in Eugene, halfway between Portland and Ashland, on December 27th. Rosemary offered to drive me, but I rented a car. I needed to do this alone. The morning of the meeting, I woke with my stomach in knots. What would I say to them? How could I explain adult complications to children who just wanted their grandmother back? I arrived at the park 30 minutes early, watching families play on the equipment, my heart hammering. At exactly noon, Autumn's car pulled into the parking lot. Oliver and Sage tumbled out, and the moment they saw me, they ran. Just ran across the grass, their faces split with joy and tears. I caught them in my arms and held on tight, breathing in their familiar smell of children's shampoo and whatever they'd had for breakfast. They were real. They were here. They were okay. "Why did you leave?" Oliver asked, his face pressed into my shoulder. "Did we do something bad?" "No, baby, no. You did nothing wrong. Nothing." I knelt down, my knees protesting but my heart insisting, and looked into their faces. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that have nothing to do with kids. Grandma needed to take care of herself for a while, but I never stopped loving you. Not for one single second. "Are you coming back?" Sage asked, hope shining in her eyes. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but that's not because of you. That's because Mommy and Grandma have to work some things out. Grown-up things." I saw Autumn then, standing by her car, her face unreadable. Marcus was in the passenger seat, his expression cold. We went to lunch at a pizza place, the kids' choice. For 2 hours, I got to just be Grandma again. We talked about school, about their friends, about the books they were reading. I gave them presents I'd wrapped carefully, science kits for Sage, a telescope for Oliver that I'd spent more than I should have. "These are from my new house," I told them, "where Grandma is staying now, and maybe, someday, you can come visit me there." "When?" they asked in unison. "When it's right," I said, which was the most honest answer I had. When I walked them back to the car, Autumn finally spoke. "Satisfied?" she asked coldly. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not satisfied that my grandchildren blame themselves for adult problems. I'm not satisfied that you haven't once apologized for 2 years of exploitation. I'm not satisfied that you're using these children as weapons instead of protecting them from this mess. This mess you created. This mess I walked away from," I corrected. "There's a difference, Autumn, and until you can see that difference, until you can acknowledge that I'm a person who deserves respect, we have nothing more to discuss." I hugged Oliver and Sage one more time, promised them we'd see each other again soon, and walked to my car before I could change my mind. As I drove away, I watched them in my rearview mirror, 2 small figures waving goodbye, and I wondered if I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because going back without real change would just restart the cycle, and I loved them too much to teach them that love means accepting mistreatment, even if it meant my heart broke every single day. Chapter 7. The Crack in the Foundation. January arrived with freezing rain and a letter from David Brennan. The eviction deadline was in 3 weeks. Autumn and Marcus had not found alternative housing. The utilities had been shut off twice more because they'd paid late, or not at all, and they'd filed a formal complaint with Oregon Adult Protective Services, claiming I'd abandoned a dependent elder, myself. The claim was dismissed immediately. David assured me over the phone, "You're clearly competent. You left of your own volition, and you're in a safe situation. But Delphine, they're getting desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things." I knew he was right when my phone rang at 11:00 p.m. that night. Autumn. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the button. "Mom." Her voice was different, smaller, broken. "Can we talk? Really talk? I'm listening. Not over the phone, please. Can I come see you? Just me. No Marcus. Just, please." Every instinct screamed this was a manipulation. But she was my daughter. And some part of me, the part that remembered holding her as a baby, teaching her to ride a bike, moving her into her college dorm, that part couldn't refuse. I'm not telling you where I am, but I'll meet you. There's a coffee shop in Salem, Cedar and Sage on State Street, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be there. I didn't sleep. I rehearsed 100 conversations, steeled myself against 100 manipulations. Rosemary offered to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived. Young mothers with strollers, college students on laptops, the comfortable anonymity of a crowd. I ordered tea I didn't drink, and waited. Autumn arrived 10 minutes late, and the shock of seeing her stopped my breath. She looked terrible. Her hair, usually carefully styled, hung limp. She'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Mom," she said, sitting across from me. Autumn. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she started crying. Not the manipulative tears I'd braced for, but genuine, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. Everything's falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it." I wanted to reach across the table, to comfort her the way I'd comforted every hurt since she was born. But I kept my hands wrapped around my teacup. "Tell me what's happening." The story spilled out. Marcus had finally admitted he'd been fired from his job 3 years ago, before they'd even moved in with me, for repeatedly showing up drunk. He'd lied about the business opportunities, had spent his days hiding his unemployment. They were drowning in credit card debt I'd known nothing about. Over $40,000. The car was about to be repossessed. They'd already applied for food stamps. "And the kids," she sobbed. "They're struggling. Oliver's grades are falling. Sage had a panic attack at school. They need stability, and I can't give it to them." "Why didn't you tell me any of this before?" I asked quietly. "Why not be honest instead of using me?" She looked up, her face blotchy and raw. "Because I was ashamed. Because I married someone Dad never trusted and he was right. Because I made bad choices and I didn't want to admit I needed help. Because it was easier to just take what you were offering than to face how badly I'd screwed up." It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing to honesty she'd given me in 2 years. "What about the rental agreement?" I asked. "The threats to kick me out of my own house." She flinched. "That was Marcus's idea. He said we needed to establish control, that you were being difficult, that you'd respect us more if we set firm boundaries. God, Mom, when I see that now, I can't believe I went along with it. What kind of person does that to their mother?" "Someone who was desperate and made terrible choices," I said. "Someone who hurt people because she was hurting. But Autumn, you need to understand. None of that is an excuse for what you did. Not Marcus's problems. Not your shame. You treated me like hired help and made me feel invisible in my own life." "I know." The words were barely audible. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But words were cheap. I'd learned that over the past 2 years. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I don't know. Help, I guess. But not the way it was before. I know I can't ask you to just come back and pretend nothing happened. No, you can't. Marcus is moving out. I'm filing for separation. Maybe divorce. I can't be with someone who brought this much destruction into our lives and never took responsibility for it. This was new. This was something. Where will you go when the eviction is final?" I asked. "There's an apartment in Beaverton, Section 8 housing. It's not much, but it's what we can afford with the assistance I'm getting. The kids will have to change schools. They're devastated about that, about everything." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Can you ever forgive me?" "Not now. I don't expect that. But someday, could I?" I honestly didn't know. The hurt ran deep, carved into bone. "I need to see that you've changed," I said carefully. "And not just that you're sorry, but that you understand what you did wrong, and you're actively working to be different. I need to see you take responsibility, get help for the issues in your life, build a stable environment for those kids." "I'm in therapy," she said quickly. "Started 2 weeks ago. The therapist. She's helping me see things I couldn't see before. About codependency, about enabling Marcus, about how I learned to manipulate because Dad always fixed everything for me." She paused. "She said what I did to you was a form of elder abuse, financial exploitation. I didn't I didn't want to believe her, but she's right, isn't she? Hearing her say it, admitting it, cracked something in my chest. Yes, I said. She's right. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. We sat in that coffee shop until they started stacking chairs for closing. We didn't solve everything. We didn't magically fix what had been broken. But we started the long, painful process of honest conversation. I told her about the journal, about the crushing weight of invisibility, about lying awake wondering if I was being ungrateful or if my pain was real. She told me about the shame that had driven every bad decision, about the fear that had made her cling to security at any cost, even at the cost of her mother's dignity. I want to see the kids regularly, I said, as we stood to leave. Not at your house, neutral places, and I want you to be honest with them about why I left. Age appropriately, but honest, okay? And I want you to understand that I'm not coming back. To Portland, to the house, to the way things were. That life is over. Autumn, if we're going to rebuild something, it has to be something new. I understand. I almost believed her. As I drove back to Ashland that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Fragile, tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. But I also felt something else. Caution. Because people didn't change overnight, and I'd been burned too badly to trust easily anymore. The question was whether Autumn's awakening was real, or just another form of manipulation. Prettier words, same old patterns. Only time would tell. Chapter 8. The Slow Healing. February brought unexpected developments. Autumn moved into her Section 8 apartment in Beaverton, a 2-bedroom unit that was clean but sparse. She sent me pictures, Oliver and Sage in their new shared room, unpacking boxes, their faces trying to be brave. They're adjusting, she wrote. It's hard, but we're making it work. Oliver asked if you could come visit sometime. I drove to Portland on a Saturday, my stomach knotted with nerves. The apartment complex was exactly what you'd expect. Functional, affordable, filled with people doing their best with limited resources. Nothing like the comfortable house I'd provided for free. When Oliver opened the door, his face lit up like sunrise. Grandma. The apartment was small but tidy. Autumn had made an effort. Colorful curtains, the kids, artwork on the walls, a small dining table where homework was spread out. Welcome to our new place, Autumn said, hovering nervously. It's not much, but it's yours, I said. That matters. We had lunch, sandwiches Autumn had made herself, I noticed. Not takeout or something I'd prepared. Small thing, but significant. After the kids went to play in their room, Autumn and I sat on her thrift store couch and really talked. Marcus is fighting the separation, she admitted. He says I'm abandoning him when he needs support. His mother calls me every day to tell me what a terrible person I am. Are you okay? No, but I'm doing it anyway. My therapist says that's what matters, doing the hard thing even when it's terrifying. She paused. She also said I owe you more than just an apology. She said I owe you amends. What does that mean to you? Autumn pulled out a folder. Inside were spreadsheets. Detailed, meticulous accounting of every dollar she'd spent of mine over 2 years. Groceries, utilities, property taxes, the car repair Marcus had put on my credit card without asking, the vacation they'd taken last summer while I'd watched the kids. $73,847.26, she said, her voice shaking. That's what I owe you. I can't pay it back all at once. I can barely afford groceries right now. But I'm going to pay you back. $20 a month. $50 if I can manage more. It'll take decades, but I'm going to do it. I looked at the spreadsheet, at my daughter's tear-stained face, and something shifted in me. Keep your money, I said quietly. Use it for Oliver and Sage, for therapy, for building a stable life. But what I need from you isn't money, Autumn. It's change. Real, lasting change. Show me you understand what you did. Show me you're becoming someone who wouldn't do it again. She cried. I cried. And for the first time in 2 years, we hugged like mother and daughter instead of adversaries. But as I drove back to Ashland that evening, I felt the complexity of it all. Because forgiveness wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a garden you tended, uncertain what would grow. Over the next months, we built something new. Slowly, carefully. I visited every other week. Neutral locations at first. Parks, museums, lunch spots, then, gradually, Autumn's apartment. I watched as she struggled, stumbled, got back up. She found a job as a receptionist. It didn't pay much, but it was honest work, and she showed up every day. She attended every therapy session. She joined a divorce recovery group. She stopped drinking, something I hadn't even known was a problem until she admitted she'd been using wine to numb the shame. The kids, schools arranged counseling. Oliver's grades slowly improved. Sage's panic attacks became less frequent. And me? I built a life in Ashland. I volunteered at the domestic violence shelter, helping other women find the courage to leave situations that were destroying them. I told my story in support groups, the 70-year-old woman who'd finally learned to set boundaries. I went on dates. Yes, dates, at my age. A retired English teacher named Graham who made me laugh and never once made me feel like I owed him anything. Nothing serious, but proof that life didn't end at 70, even after heartbreak. In May, 7 months after I'd disappeared, Autumn asked if I'd come to Oliver's school play. "He has a solo," she said. "He really wants you there." I went, and watching my grandson on that stage, confident and happy, I saw the resilience children have when adults finally get their act together. After the play, as we stood in the parking lot, Autumn said something that made me realize how far we'd come. "Thank you for leaving," she said. "I mean it. Thank you for loving yourself enough to walk away. Because if you hadn't, I never would have woken up. I'd still be that person who exploited her own mother and called it family. Are you happy?" I asked. "No," she admitted, "but I'm honest, and I'm trying. That's more than I was before." Chapter 9. The Hard Truths. By summer, the divorce was final. Marcus had moved to Seattle with his mother, leaving without saying goodbye to the kids. Oliver pretended not to care, but I found him crying in Autumn's bathroom one afternoon when I was visiting. "Why doesn't Dad want us?" he asked, his 7-year-old face crumpling. I held him while he sobbed, and I hated Marcus with an intensity that surprised me. Not for what he'd done to me, but for what he was doing to these innocent children. "Your dad has problems he needs to fix," I told Oliver, choosing my words carefully. And sometimes adults are so focused on their own pain that they can't see anyone else's. But that's not because you're not lovable. You're so lovable, Oliver. So worthy of love. Mom says you left because we weren't treating you right," he said quietly. "Did I not treat you right?" My heart cracked. "You treated me perfectly. Your mom meant the grown-ups, not you. Never you." But these were the consequences I hadn't fully considered when I'd walked out that December morning. Yes, Autumn was changing. Yes, we were rebuilding. But the children bore scars from the chaos their parents had created. Sage developed anxiety around food security. She'd hoard snacks in her room, terrified they'd run out. It took months of therapy to help her understand that empty cupboards weren't coming back. Oliver became hypervigilant about money. At 8 years old, he'd ask Autumn if they could afford things before requesting them, even small things like a library card or a school field trip. These babies had learned too young that stability was fragile, that the adults in their lives could fail them, and I had to live with knowing that my choice, necessary as it was, had contributed to that lesson. In August, Rosemary was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2, treatable, but requiring surgery and chemotherapy. "You'll stay with me, won't you?" she asked. "I'm scared to do this alone." Of course I would. She'd taken me in when I had nowhere else to go. Now it was my turn, but it meant telling Autumn I'd be less available. When I called to explain, there was a pause. "I'll help," Autumn said. "If Aunt Rose needs anything, rides to appointments, meals, whatever, I'll come down. It's only 3 hours. You have work, the kids. Mom, you were there for me when I didn't deserve it. Let me be there for you now." And she was. Every Sunday, Autumn drove to Ashland with Oliver and Sage. They'd spend the day helping with whatever Rosemary needed. The kids would read to her when she was too weak from chemo to hold a book. Autumn would cook meals and stock the freezer. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't erasing the past, but it was proof that people could grow, could change, could become better versions of themselves. Yet one evening in September, as we sat on Rosemary's porch watching the kids play in the yard, Autumn said, "I've been thinking about something my therapist said." "What's that?" She said you modeled self-respect for us when you left, that Oliver and Sage will remember a grandmother who knew her worth, who refused to accept mistreatment even from people she loved. She said that's a gift, even though it hurt at the time. I watched Oliver chase Sage around the garden, their laughter floating on the evening air. Do you think they'll understand someday? I asked. I think they already do, in their way. Oliver told his friend at school that his grandma is the strongest person he knows, because she left when people were being mean to her. He said she taught him it's okay to protect yourself. Tears filled my eyes. Did he really say that? He did. And Sage, she wrote in her journal that she wants to be brave like Grandma when she grows up. Maybe that was enough. Maybe teaching them that love didn't mean accepting abuse, that boundaries were healthy, that everyone, even grandmothers, deserved respect. Maybe that was worth the pain of the last year. Are we okay? Autumn asked quietly. You and me? I thought about it honestly. We're getting there. Some days I'm still angry. Some days I remember how invisible you made me feel and the hurt is fresh. But some days, like today, I just feel grateful that you're trying, that we didn't lose each other completely. I'm grateful too, even for the hard parts, because they made me face things I'd been running from my whole life. We sat in silence as the sun set over the Ashland Hills, two women learning how to be family again, not the way we were before, but something new, something built on honesty instead of obligation. It wasn't perfect, it probably never would be, but it was real, and real, I was learning, was enough. Chapter 10. The Unexpected Grief. Rosemary died in November, exactly 1 year after I'd left Portland. The cancer that was supposed to be treatable spread faster than anyone expected. Within 3 months of diagnosis, she was gone. I held her hand as she took her last breath, Autumn on my other side. In the end, my sister had given me one final gift. She'd shown Autumn what it meant to show up for family without expecting anything in return. The grief hit me harder than I'd anticipated. Yes, I'd lost Theodore 6 years ago, but Rosemary's death felt different, more final somehow. She'd been my safety net, my refuge, the person who'd asked no questions when I'd needed to disappear. Well, what will you do now? Autumn asked at the funeral reception. Will you stay in Ashland? I looked around Rosemary's house, soon to be sold, according to her will, and realized I had no idea. I don't know, I admitted. This was supposed to be temporary. I never planned to stay this long. You could, Autumn hesitated. You could come back to Portland, not to live with us. God, no, we're not repeating that mistake. But there are senior apartments near us. You could be close to the kids, if you wanted. Did I want that? A year ago, the answer would have been a desperate yes. But now, let me think about it, I said. I spent December sorting through Rosemary's belongings, each item a memory. I found letters she'd saved, ones I'd written to her over the years, back when we'd been closer, before Autumn had monopolized my time. In one letter from 10 years ago, I'd written, "Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into motherhood and grandmotherhood. Like Delphine, the person is being slowly erased by Delphine the helper. Is it selfish to want more?" Rosemary had written back, "It's not selfish. It's human. Don't lose yourself, Del. They'll take everything you give and more. Make them remember you're a person first." I'd ignored that advice, and it had taken hitting rock bottom to finally listen. Among Rosemary's things, I found a letter addressed to me, dated just 2 weeks before she died. "Del, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry I had to leave you, but I need you to know something. Watching you rebuild your life this year has been one of my greatest joys. You came here broken, convinced you were worthless. You're leaving here whole. Don't go back to Portland if it means shrinking yourself again. Don't choose proximity to family over your own peace. You've earned the right to be selfish, to pick the life that makes you happy. But if you do go back, do it from a place of strength, not guilt. Do it because you want to, not because you think you should. I love you. I'm proud of you. And wherever I am, I'll be cheering you on. Rose." I cried for an hour, clutching that letter, grieving not just for my sister, but for all the years I'd spent not listening to wisdom that was freely given. On New Year's Eve, I made my decision. I would move back to Portland, but not for Autumn, for me, because after a year away, I'd realized something. I missed my city. I missed the rain, the roses, the neighborhoods I'd known for 50 years, but I'd do it on my terms. I found a senior living community in Southeast Portland, independent living with activities, community, and my own small apartment, close enough to see the grandkids regularly, far enough to maintain boundaries. I'm not going to be your on-call babysitter, I told Autumn when I shared my plans. I'm not going to cook your dinners or clean your house. I'm going to be your mother and their grandmother, but I'm also going to have my own life. I wouldn't expect anything else, she said, and I believed her. Chapter 11. The New Normal. I moved into Cedarwood Gardens in February, 2 years and 3 months after my disappearance. My apartment was small but mine. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room with a view of Mount Hood on clear days. I furnished it carefully. Theodore's favorite chair, my mother's china, photographs of the children, but also new things. Art I'd chosen, colors I loved, a life that was distinctly mine. The community was full of women like me, survivors of various kinds, rebuilding in their later years. I made friends, real friends, not just Autumn's book club acquaintances who dropped me the moment I became inconvenient. Gladys in 3B had left an abusive marriage at 72. Patricia on my floor had walked away from adult children who'd drained her retirement. We understood each other in ways that didn't require explanation. I saw Oliver and Sage twice a week, once for dinner at Autumn's apartment, once for an outing, just us. Museums, libraries, the zoo, quality time without the weight of obligation. You seem happy, Grandma, Sage said one afternoon as we fed the ducks at Laurelhurst Park. She was 10 now, growing tall and confident. I am happy, I realized. Happier than I've been in years, because you don't have to take care of everyone anymore. The perceptiveness of children never failed to amaze me. Partly that, and partly because I learned I matter too, not just as someone who helps others, but as a person with my own needs and dreams. What are your dreams now? Oliver asked, his 9-year-old face serious. To see you two grow up into good humans. To travel a little. I'm thinking of taking a cruise to Alaska next summer. To write down some of the stories from my life so you'll know your grandmother was more than just the lady who made cookies. You're lots more than that, Oliver said loyally. You're the strongest person I know. These moments, these honest, loving moments, made everything worth it. The pain, the guilt, the year of separation. We'd found our way back to each other, but on healthier ground. Autumn continued therapy. She dated occasionally, but wasn't in a hurry to remarry. I need to figure out who I am outside of relationships first, she explained. She got a promotion at work, office manager now, with a salary that finally allowed her to stop relying on assistants. She was proud of that, I could tell. Proud of building something through her own effort. We had dinner once a month, just the two of us. Sometimes the conversations were easy, full of laughter and memories of better times. Sometimes they were hard, circling around hurts that hadn't fully healed. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me? She asked one evening over Thai food. I considered the question honestly. I don't think forgiveness is a destination. It's more like a practice. Some days I wake up and the anger is gone and I just feel love. Other days, something reminds me of how invisible you made me feel and the hurt comes back. That's fair, she said quietly. I think about what I did every day, how I treated you. I'm ashamed of that person I was. Don't be ashamed. Learn from her. Use her as a reminder of who you don't want to be. My therapist says something similar. That shame keeps us stuck, but accountability moves us forward. Your therapist is smart. We smiled at each other across the table. 2 women who'd almost destroyed each other, learning how to coexist with grace. Graham, the English teacher I'd been dating, proposed in May. Not marriage. We were both too old and set in our ways for that. But partnership. Move in with me, he said. Or I'll move in with you. Or we'll get a place together. I don't care about the logistics. I just know I'm happier when you're around. I said yes. Not because I needed him, but because I wanted him. That distinction mattered. We bought a small house in Northeast Portland. 2 bedrooms, each of us with our own space, but together, learning to build a life that honored both independence and partnership. Autumn was surprisingly supportive. You deserve happiness, Mom. You deserve someone who sees you. So do you, I told her. I'm working on it. Maybe someday. On the 2-year anniversary of my disappearance, Autumn showed up at my new house with a gift. A scrapbook she'd made, pictures of us through the years, from her childhood to now. But more than that, letters from Oliver and Sage, reflecting on what they'd learned. Oliver wrote, "Grandma taught me that everyone deserves respect, even the people we love most. She showed me it's okay to protect yourself when someone is hurting you, even if leaving is scary. I want to be brave like her." Sage wrote, "When Grandma left, I thought it was because I was bad, but I learned it was because the grown-ups were making bad choices. Grandma taught me that sometimes loving yourself means disappointing other people, and that's okay. I'm going to remember that when I grow up." I cried reading their words, understanding that the lessons we'd learned, painful as they were, would echo through generations. "Thank you," I told Autumn, clutching the scrapbook, "for changing, for doing the hard work, for not giving up on us. Thank you for leaving," she said, "for loving yourself enough to walk away, for teaching me that boundaries aren't punishments, they're love." We hugged, and it felt different than it had 2 years ago. Stronger, more honest, built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt.